Between her legs, the stench of rotting fish and decay told a gruesome tale few dared whisper. How did the fourth wife of Henry VIII, once a queen of England, descend into a tragic fate, shrouded in horror and silence? What secrets did the royal chambers hide, and why did her demise seep into history's darkest shadows? Prepare to uncover the macabre truth behind Catherine Howard's fatal downfall. The story of Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fourth wife, begins within the gilded and turbulent halls of Tudor England, a world where power and peril wove an inescapable tapestry. Unlike Henry's previous wife, Anne Boleyn, Catherine was a young, vivacious noblewoman, scarcely 18 years old when she entered the king's life. Yet her youth, beauty, and innocence were both her allure and her undoing. Born into a precarious household, Catherine had already endured neglect and questionable care in her formative years. Her father's family was disgraced, and she grew up not as a pampered princess, but in the shadow of scandal and survival, making her an unlikely candidate for one of the most powerful men in Europe. Upon catching Henry VIII's eye, Catherine became queen with promises of joy and stability. However, beneath the canopy of royal splendor, grim forces stirred. Henry was growing increasingly volatile, his court rife with intrigue and betrayal. Her arrival ignited hope among many courtiers who believed her pure and untouched by the corruption that tainted others. But the past, as it often does, clawed its way out. Catherine's youthful indiscretions and previous promiscuity secrets, concealed but never entirely lost wold, soon reached the ears of those who sought her ruin. How could a queen destined to bear royal heirs and secure the Tudor dynasty fall so precipitously into disgrace? How did the bright potential of youth become overshadowed by decay, both moral and literal? Whispers were not enough. Evidence of betrayal would ultimately condemn her. Yet the manner of her downfall was unlike any other in the annals of English royalty, horrifying, clandestine, and marked by a grotesque final chapter that would haunt history. Catherine's story is not merely one of political downfall, but a harrowing journey into decay and abandonment. Between the royal sheets, where secrecy festered, the repulsive stench of rotting flesh symbolized far more than physical death. It mirrored a collapse of trust, honor, and human dignity. This stench, as chroniclers faintly noted, lingered in the chambers where she once held sway, a silent and gruesome testimony to her tragic fate. As we unravel her life from hopeful beginnings through sordid revelations to her ghastly end, we confront deeper questions. What truly happened to Catherine Howard after she was imprisoned in the Tower of London? Did neglect and despair hasten her demise, or was there an even darker sickness at play? And how did the smell, so pungent and unnatural, come to fill the spaces where only moments before there had been royalty and grace? Before we delve deeper into the secrets held between those ancient walls, take a moment to consider, what price does the pursuit of power extract in the shadows of history? Subscribe now and join the investigation. What do you think sealed Catherine Howard's tragic fit innocence lost, or a conspiracy of cruelty? Share your thoughts below as we journey into the macabre world of Tudor tragedy. Catherine Howard's origins were shadowed by familial neglect and the grim realities of Tudor court life. Raised primarily in the household of her step-grandmother, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, Catherine's youth was not sheltered. Instead, it was marked by neglect, an absence of guidance, and exposure to the crude behaviors of the ladies around Hermione, far from virtuous. While other young noblewomen were educated and prepared to play roles in courtly intrigue, Catherine lived in relative ignorance of morality's finer points, her innocence more a product of naivety than virtue. Her relative obscurity prior to her introduction to Henry VIII kept her under the radar. Yet at the court, her youth and effervescence caught the aging king's attention. Nearly 50 years old and desperately seeking a new bride following his third wife's death, Henry was captivated by her vivacity. Against the backdrop of a kingdom fractured by religious reform and political strife, Catherine's beauty seemed a brief respite, a glittering distraction. Court life, however, concealed sharp edges beneath its opulence. Henry's ministers monitored the young queen, wary that her inexperience might invite scandal. Despite her naivety, Catherine had a past that haunted her. Previous liaisons with men outside of marriage, some whispered to be more than mere flirtations. In Tudor morality, such acts were not forgiven lightly, especially not by a king who had famously executed 2 wives. Within the palace, Catherine's days were a mixture of hopeful joy and growing tension. She was showered with jewels and favors, yet increasingly isolated by those who doubted her legitimacy or feared her influence. Servants and advisers began noticing a faint but persistent odor emanating from her private chambers, a sickly smell, reminiscent of overripe fish slowly rotting. It puzzled and repelled the household. Some whispered it was the result of low hygiene. Others feared it was a sign of something more sinister, a physical manifestation of decay echoing her spiritual and moral falling. This mysterious smell would become symbolic, a grisly marker of Catherine's slow unraveling. How could a queen, surrounded by the best care and servants, develop such a putrid stench? Could it be illness? Or was it neglect born of court politics? As reports circulated, courtiers and servants alike began to distance themselves, fearing association with the queen's deteriorating reputation and, possibly, her health. Concurrently, secret investigations into Catherine's past uncovered evidence that would seal her doom. Letters, witnesses, even whispered confessions spoke of her previous indiscretions, painting a picture of recklessness beneath the veneer of innocence. Henry's wrath was swift and merciless. Yet Catherine's fate was sealed not simply by her past, but by the ominous, spreading scent that marked her physical and social decay. It was as if the queen herself was rotting from the inside out, a living testament to the dangers that lurked behind Tudor court's glittering façade. As the court tightened its grip, Catherine's life became a nightmare of isolation, suspicion, and fear. Those who once admired her beauty now recoiled at the smell that tainted the royal apartments. The grotesque nature of her condition was whispered about in hushed tones, a morbid curiosity that no one dared confront openly. How did this foul scent intertwine with her tragic fall? What hidden torments did she suffer in the private chambers that the public never saw? The mystery deepened as Catherine was confined, removed from the king and the court's public eye. Was this stench simply a symptom of malnutrition, disease, or punishment? Or did it carry a darker symbolism of decay, not just of body, but of a doomed queen's very soul? The stage was set for a grim revelation, one that would haunt England's royal history for centuries. The tale takes a darker turn when Catherine Howard's clandestine past was unveiled to Henry VIII, setting into motion a chain of events as horrifying as they were swift. Within weeks of her coronation, rumors began to swirl about the queen's unchaste behavior prior to her marriage. The very words whispered in shadowed corridors: infidelity, betrayal, deception were deadly accusations in a court where the king's favor meant life or death. As the rumors ossified into evidence, political enemies exploited the scandal with ruthless efficiency. Documents surfaced accusing Catherine of continuing inappropriate liaisons even after ascending the throne. The weight of these allegations was devastating, branding her not just as a casting error, but a traitor to the crown. In Tudor England, the queen's virtue was synonymous with the legitimacy of heirs and the stability of the realm. Her fall from grace threatened to unravel much more than personal reputations. In response, Henry's council launched a covert investigation, employing spies and interrogators determined to unearth every sordid detail. Catherine was confined to the royal apartments, ostensibly for protection, but in reality, she became a prisoner within her own palace. Servants reported the stench intensifying around her chambers, described as a vile rotten fish smell, thick and clinging to the tapestries, dresses, and floors. The smell was so potent, it was whispered to have made even the most stalwart guards gag and recoil. Medical experts called upon the court speculated on its cause, ranging from infections to untended wounds, though no official diagnosis was ever recorded. Some surmised that the odor was a symptom of syphilis, a common but scandalous disease among Tudor nobility. Others suspected physical and emotional neglect had led to uterine infections or gangrene, conditions which, without modern medicine, could fester quickly and fatally. The Queen's apparent refusal or inability to bathe and tend to herself exacerbated the effect. Amid the stench and secrecy, Catherine's health declined. Witnesses recounted her eyes growing hollow, her movements sluggish, her spirit broken. The Queen, who once captivated the court with laughter and light, now lingered in a ghastly shadow, trapped within a foul-smelling tomb of her own making, or perhaps imposed by cruel circumstance. It is said that the smell permeated not only her chambers, but the very linens she wore, a visceral sign of the rot metastasizing beneath the surface. Political machinations capitalized on her degradation. The king, previously smitten, grew distant and eventually vengeful. Execution loomed, the only outcome to cleanse the royal image and reinforce Henry's iron grip. Yet the grim details of her physical decay remain among the darkest in royal history. What truly caused the smell disease? Punishment or neglect? Did the court intentionally isolate and starve Catherine, allowing her body to fail as a spectacle of fate and warning? In the darkest hours of a Tudor winter, Catherine was moved to the Tower of London, her prison a stark contrast to the palatial chambers she once graced. Her condition worsened in captivity, the smell becoming a haunting echo of her fallen status. Guards and servants despaired at the filth, some claiming they wished to ease her suffering, others believing she was damned beyond salvation. How did the Queen endure this descent, stripped of dignity and health? And what private torments lingered behind the iron bars, concealed by the stench that no one dared confront directly? Catherine's torment was not merely physical, but an agonizing isolation from the power and love she had briefly held. It was the beginning of a final Dicentinto death, oblivion, and the macabre history she would forever haunt. While imprisoned in the Tower of London, Catherine Howard faced a harrowing existence that merged physical suffering with utter desolation. Confined to a lonely cell, removed from the comforts to which she had once been accustomed, her world shrank to damp stone walls and stale air. The king's wrath was unyielding, and those charged with her care had little sympathy for a woman branded a traitor and adulteress. Catherine's health deteriorated rapidly. Illness ravaged her body. Some accounts hinted a breakdown of hygiene, compounded by infections common in the unsanitary conditions of Tudor prisons. Few resources or medical aid were provided, and neglect reigned. The foul stench Charles whispered about in court tone, likened to rotting fish, grew ever more pervasive, perhaps emanating from festering wounds or untreated diseases affecting her most private areas. This unspeakable scent became part of her tragic legend, a physical metaphor for her rotten reputation and impending doom. Despite her plight, Catherine maintained a fragile hope. She petitioned for mercy, writing letters beseeching the king for forgiveness. In them, she portrayed herself as young, misguided, and remorseful a victim rather than a villain. Yet, in Henry VIII's realm, remorse was rarely enough to save a fallen queen. Legal proceedings moved swiftly, and Parliament declared her guilty of treason, a capital offense for a queen. The Tower, grim and merciless, was both prison and witness to a final chapter steeped in fear and decay. Guards recounted her ghostly appearances, hollow, skin pale, her form diminished and foul-smelling. Rumors swirled that she suffered agonizing pain from infections that no physician could cure. Some reports mention a miscarriage or injury aggravated by confinement, deepening the gruesome nature of her physical state. Public sentiment was divided, but mostly unsympathetic. Henry VIII's court, obsessed with purity and loyalty, saw Catherine's fate as a cautionary tale, a somber confirmation that royal blood did not guarantee protection from shame or death. The queen who had once walked between royal sheets now languished in disgrace, her name synonymous with treachery and decay. Behind closed doors, however, whispers alluded to darker forces at work. Some suggested that Catherine's captors deliberately neglected her hygiene and health to compound her suffering, turning her physical condition into evidence of moral corruption. Others claimed that the king himself had ordered harsh treatment, ensuring her body would become a symbol of punishment as much as the public legal decree. The stench between her legs was not just a byproduct of disease or neglect. It was a visceral emblem of the tragic collapse from queen to prisoner. It forced those around her to confront the grim consequences of royal folly and human frailty. As the stench clung to the stones of the tower, so too did Catherine's story cling to the collective memory of a nation fascinated and horrified by the twisted fates of its monarchs. What final moments did she endure in these oppressive walls? Was there any redemption in her last hours, or was her death a mere footnote in a court obsessed with power and reputation? As Henry prepared for public closure, the shadow of Catherine Howard's rotten secret loomed larger than ever, a macabre testament to a queen destroyed not just by politics, but by rot itself. The end came swiftly and mercilessly. Catherine Howard's execution was both spectacle and tragedy. On the 5th of February, 1542, the former queen was led to the scaffold within the Tower grounds, a place where many before her had met the axe or the noose. Her appearance shocked even the most hardened courtiers, frail, pale, and still burdened by the infamous stench that marked her imprisonment. Reports from witnesses describe an aura of tragic innocence entwined with a palpable aura of decay. In her final moments, Catherine sought to assert a measure of dignity. She declared her youth and mistakes, pleading for remembrance not as a traitor, but as a misguided soul punished too harshly. Her executioner, moved perhaps by her frailty, reportedly ended her life with a swift blow to the neck, sparing her the drawn-out agony that others had suffered. But Catherine's death was not the end of her tragic narrative. In the days following, courtiers whispered of the smell-that unbearable stench of rotting fish still clinging to her clothing, and even the scaffold where she met death. It lingered, haunting those who had watched her fall from grace. This odor became a grotesque symbol of the irreversible corruption her story embodied, a sensory ghost that clung stubbornly to Tudor memory. Historians have long debated the exact origin of this smell. Was it the result of physical infections exacerbated by imprisonment, an untreated disease that ravaged her body internally? Or could it have been a deliberate strategy by her captors to degrade her further, a psychological punishment transforming a once revered queen into a figure of revulsion? Beyond the medical mysteries, the cultural impact was profound. Catherine Howard's story served as a chilling lesson to subsequent generations about the perilous intersection of youth, ambition, and royal expectation. The foul odor and her tragic end were emblematic of how quickly favor could turn to ruin in the Tudor court, where love and death danced dangerously close. In the larger context, her downfall also reflected the brutal realities faced by royal women. Subjected to impossible standards of fidelity and behavior, their worth was inextricably tied to their ability to bear heirs and maintain honor. Catherine's failure, real or perceived, revealed the fragility beneath the crown. Her story chronicles not just personal tragedy, but also the lethal politics that defined Tudor England. Yet even amidst this darkness, a human story emerged as a young woman trapped by circumstances, betrayed by love and power, left to decay in silence. The smell between her legs was more than odor. It was the mark of a life destroyed, a lingering testament to a queen who was in her final days, forgotten by many, but immortalized by history's gaze. If you found Catherine Howard's story haunting and tragic, Don't forget to subscribe and delve deeper into the morbid tales of history. What do you believe was the cruelest aspect of her fatale public shaming, or the physical decay that consumed her? Let us know your thoughts below as we prepare to close this somber chapter. The legacy of Catherine Howard remains a chilling reminder of the ruthless nature of Tudor court politics and the fragility of royal favor. Her story endures not only in the texts of chroniclers, but also in the dark folklore that surrounds her name. The stench of rotting fish that reportedly clung to her in her last days has become a symbol of decay, both literal and metaphorical, that encapsulates the tragic downfall of a young queen caught in an unforgiving world. Henry VIII's reign, characterized by its sweeping reforms and merciless treatment of wives, produced many tales of betrayal and ruin. Yet, Catherine's case stands apart for its particularly gruesome and intimate details. Few royal narratives unveil such a grotesque intersection of physical decay and political demise. Historians continue to debate the precise medical causes behind the infamous smell, ranging from untreated venereal diseases to post-mortem decomposition, accelerated by harsh imprisonment conditions. More than a medical curiosity, Catherine's fate offers profound reflections on gender, power, and vulnerability. As queen, she represented the hope of a lasting Tudor lineage. Yet as a woman branded by indiscretion, she became the kingdom's scapegoat. Her tragic end reveals how personal narratives could be overtaken by public purposes, turning a living, breathing individual into a cautionary emblem used to enforce order and obedience. The macabre detail of the stench speaks to a broader truth about how society views and punishes women who stray from prescribed roles. In Catherine's era, reputation was intertwined with physical purity. Once lost, it could never be reclaimed. The spread of rumor, the isolation in prison, and the withholding of care all played their part in her literal and figurative death by decay. Her body's condition became a barometer for her perceived moral and political rot, a grim spectacle for all who witnessed her fall. Today, examining Catherine Howard's fate challenges us to confront uncomfortable intersections of history, medicine, and gender politics. It reminds us that behind the glittering faade of royalty lay human frailty, suffering, and cruelty. The smell between her legs, the rotting fish that haunts her tragedy, is a stark, visceral symbol of a young life unraveled by forces beyond control. Ultimately, Catherine Howard's story is a powerful testament to the dangerous allure of power and the merciless penalties of failure in a royal court. It serves as an echo from the dark past, compelling us to remember not just the grandeur of monarchs, but also the profound human costs hidden beneath. As we close this chapter, her tragic tale lingers like the foul stench in those ancient chambers, a lasting stain on Tudor history's grim tapestry.